December 31st draws ever closer, and the questions on many people's minds is, what will happen here in Seattle when the clock strikes 12? Good evening, I'm Detective Randy Husrick, and thank you for tuning in to Beyond the Badge. We'll have some answers about the department's preparedness for the year 2000 in just a few minutes. On tonight's show, our up-close segment will focus on the department's communications section, better known to you as 911. You'll see how 911 calls are handled and exactly what happens inside this critical police unit. Our neighborhood focus will take us to the Garfield community and a neighborhood group that is helping the city fight crime. And speaking of fighting crime, our crime prevention tip this evening will focus on abandoned vehicles. And later in tonight's show, Seattle Police Chief Norm Stamper will be joining me to take your calls and questions live. I'm sure you've heard all sorts of stories and theories regarding what will happen when the clock hits midnight on December 31st of this year, from worst case scenarios to possibly the biggest non-event of the last 1,000 years. Seattle Police Department has been working hard to ensure a smooth transition of police services into the year 2000. And now, here's more on the department's preparedness for Y2K.
Hello, I'm Detective Tina Drain. I'm certain you've heard your share about Y2K already. At the Seattle Police Department, it has been more than just a topic of conversation. To ensure that public safety is maintained during the changeover to the next century, the Seattle Police Department has been very busy. Let's find out just how busy by talking with Lieutenant Ted Jacoby, the Y2K Project Manager for SPD. Ted, you're the Y2K Project Manager for the Police Department. What does that job entail?
Well, the Y2K Project Manager with any of the city departments is principally tasked with trying to ensure that their individual departments follow a certain protocol which has been established by the City of Seattle to ensure that business processes and services are delivered without interruption after January 1st. The major systems that the department has looked at have been the 911 center. Obviously, people are interested to know whether they dial 911 on January the 1st, whether a police officer is going to respond to their call. Another system is the record management system, which has all of the criminal history information on people who have been handled by law enforcement, as well as all of the reports that have been taken by the police department are stored in the records management system. That is an important system that we need to ensure works after January 1st. Another system is the desktop network within the department. This is the computers that everybody has on their desk, and detectives complete case follow-ups using that desktop network. The patrol officers complete incident reports using that network, and all of the administration and finance and personnel actions that are handled on a daily basis within the department happen with the help of that desktop network. So that's an important system. And lastly, the pawn shop automated reporting system is a database by which all of the pawn shops in Seattle report all of the property that has been pawned by citizens, and where the property crimes unit can see if any of that property is actually stolen. So this is an important database and piece of technology for the department.
Seattle citizens are concerned primarily with 911 emergency response. What have we done to ensure that our communications center doesn't fail?
The 911 center was completely rebuilt in 1999, coincidentally with Y2K preparation. The new communications center has been installed in the new West Precinct at 8th and Virginia. In the process of rebuilding the communications center, all new equipment was installed. The software for that equipment was all reworked and upgraded, and had all these Y2K upgrades that were necessary installed. And the whole communications center has been tested with respect to operational testing and with respect to Y2K testing in the past month. Further, it's important that the 911 telephone system work at the same time to ensure that the incoming calls to the 911 center are received. To that end, US West just conducted what they call an end-to-end test with our new communications center because as it happened, US West was installing a new central office in Denver, and they were able to connect with our 911 center completely offline and test the telephone system as well as the radio system, and the complete system was tested and actually demonstrated for other 911 centers around the western states to show that, in fact, the telephone system in the 911 center will work on January the 1st.
How close are we to making sure that all the systems will function on January 1st?
Well, all 4 of these systems have been assessed to see what their capabilities are with respect to reporting 4-digit dates in the year 2000. They have been repaired or had replacements of components where that has been indicated. And currently we're in the process of testing all of those systems after the repairs have been made to ensure that they will function properly on January 1st. And then once the testing is completed, the systems will be certified by each of the people involved in the testing and by the Y2K project manager and eventually by the chief of police. And then we will report the compliancy of all of our major systems to the mayor in the October-November timeframe. A lot of work has been done to ensure that these systems all work on January the 1st. My confidence level is fairly high right now that everything will work as scheduled.
As you can see, SPD has been very busy making sure our internal structure is ready for the Y2K changeover. But what about the Y2K New Year's Eve celebrations? Our department also has been planning staffing levels to make sure the celebration of the new century goes on without a hitch. Here is Assistant Chief Ed Joyner. Chief Joyner, let's talk about New Year's Eve. What can we expect to happen with the numbers of people that will be out celebrating?
I think this year, just simply because of the year involved, going to 2,000, we expect a larger than normal number of people to be out. We currently are looking at a large event at the Seattle Center that may draw in excess of 100,000 people. So I think the numbers of people that are going to be out is going to be unusually large, and I think the sheer volume of people will cause some problems in terms of traffic control and so forth. And then, of course, in addition, this particular year, there is the concern about the Y2K issue and whether or not all of the infrastructure will continue to operate as usual once the clock hits midnight. So, and that could have impact on traffic lights, traffic signals, and potentially even on other aspects of the communications, for example. And so we obviously need to be prepared to deal with whatever may occur that particular night.
How are we prepared?
We anticipate fielding a much larger than normal number of officers. All of our cars will be two-person cars citywide, and so we want to be in a position to respond with the appropriate numbers of officers wherever issues may occur. And it could be crowd control issues, it may be traffic control issues, and it could be situations where we may have to respond to alarms going off, things of that nature. But we want to make sure that we're in a position to respond to any eventuality. If it turns out that the night goes very well, which is certainly what we anticipate, we'll be in a position to start sending officers home at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. But we want to make sure that we're adequately prepared just in case anything does go wrong.
As you have heard, the Seattle Police Department is well prepared for the year 2000, both on the technical side and on the staffing side. Next up is Operator Debbie Cepeda, who will take you behind the scenes to the 911 Communications Center.
Hi, I'm Debbie Cepeda, and I'm a civilian dispatcher assigned to the Seattle Police Department Communications Division, where I've worked for the past 16 years. You might know it better as 911. I'm talking to you today from the new 911 Center, which will become operational this month. All of us at 911 are very excited about coming to work here. In this month's Up Close segment, we're going to learn more about police communications and how the 911 system works. We will also learn what it's like to work here and how you, the public, can assist us when you need to call. One person who can give us this information is dispatcher Suzanne Lamar.
Seattle Police and Fire, 6-8. There's a student with a knife on the second floor, and he is enraged.
The process in which a call goes through when it comes into 911 is first it comes to a primary call taker, and the call taker determines whether it's a non-emergency or emergency call. If it's non-emergency, it's transferred over to a secondary line. If it's an emergency call, it's punched into a chief dispatcher. The location and briefly what's going on is given to the chief dispatcher, and the chief dispatcher then immediately broadcasts it for units.
Community college weapon call. It's a student that keeps yelling, "No future, no future." He's waving a butcher knife. He's an Asian male, early 20s.
I'm responding.
We ask all those questions when you call 911. Because we need to get as much information as we can for our officers responding to the scene. It's imperative that we know if there's weapons for officer safety. We need to know if there's injuries, so we know if we need to send a medical unit. And then we ask for suspect descriptions, you know, what the person looks like, what kind of car they're in. So if they leave the scene, we know what to look for. We want to know which way they're going, so we know where to look for them. So we continually ask all those questions and are updating the officers while they're driving so we don't waste time.
On any average day, we bring in about 2,500 911 calls per day. It works out to about 17,000 911 calls per week and approximately 880,000 per year. Some of the things that would make this job easier and would make it easier for the phone operators would be if the public realized that they probably shouldn't be calling us in times where we have an earthquake and they want to call down to 911 to let us know we had an earthquake, which ties up the phone lines for people who have emergencies during that time that can't get through to us. Also, the same applies for power outages. A lot of people tend to call 911 to ask us if the power is out all over the city or if it's just their block.
Down there beside your power just being out. Okay, you just don't have any lights, okay. Well, you're just going to have to find yourself some flashlights or candles or something for right now until they get the power back up, and I cannot tell you when that's going to be. There's power down all over town.
Well, you know, I think a person should call us at 911 anytime they feel that they have an emergency, or if they think it might be emergency, we encourage them to call us and let our phone operators get the information from them and decipher whether or not it is a true emergency and pass that information on.
My idea of a perfect 911 caller would be someone who calls in and is as calm as they can be in whatever situation they're in, and then they let me control the conversation. They let me ask the questions and they answer the questions quickly and completely, but they don't try to, you know, throw in their opinions and everything else into the call. They let me gather the information I need as quickly as possible. And working 911 is a stressful job, but our training, you know, the training's very intense and it really prepares you for the job. So you know, as long as you know how to handle all the calls, that takes out, you know, a lot of stress out of the job. The toughest call to take, I think for me, are calls involving children. When children are injured or children have been hurt, those are more tough than just your, you know, regular theft calls or whatever.
I'm talking to the police, Mommy! Stop it! Mommy! Stop it! Don't take the baby! Stop it! You're gonna hurt the baby! Stop it!
Nationally recognized psychologists who specialize in the field of police stress state that in some ways police dispatchers are under more stress than officers on the street. This is due to the type and volume of calls and the guidelines we work under. To give you a clearer picture of the type of stress, let's talk to dispatcher Patty Crooks and Officer Chris Young, who were both involved in what we would term a hot call.
1 0.
David, sir.
Where are they at? We got shots fired.
0.
Well, in March of '99, I got in a shootout with some bank robbers after a pursuit, and they helped us out by first giving out the description of the suspect and the fact that they were coming south on the freeway, and we picked them up at Mercer and got in a pursuit with them. And I got on and let them know where I was, and they made sure there was adequate backup. So when the pursuit terminated and the suspects were injured, it seemed like 100 officers there, and they did a good job coordinating and making sure everybody got there.
Pursuits have just a flurry of activity involved at the beginning, making sure you know where this person is, who they're going after, and you've informed everyone that needs to know that it's either that it's coming their way or that we need additional units, we need to set up containment. It's got to be one of the most stressful, besides trying to listen to the officer who's also under a tremendous amount of stress. Their adrenaline's going, they're trying to tell us where they're going, which direction. Sometimes they're in areas where they're not familiar, telling us what streets they're on and which direction they're going. They're a nightmare for us to work.
Part of being a good dispatcher is not saying anything and letting us talk during a critical moment.
Officer 3106, I've been shot. How's the officer now?
Help the officer. Stan Sayers Pitts, help the officer.
Five is 2 blocks off. 3 Sam responding.
Well, day in and day out, we are the absolute link between the community and the police department. And a lot of times people call us and want us to do things that aren't police problems or that we really can't, that's not within our jurisdiction. And it's not that we don't want to help, it's that there are alternatives. It's not always the police department that you need to call, and we'll give you some other alternatives.
Seattle Police and Fire, Operator 91. What's wrong, ma'am? I can't understand you. Your what? Your toilet is overflowing? You're going to have to call a plumber.
We talk to people at their absolute worst every single day. And sometimes it wears on us. We have very sick senses of humor down here. We laugh at things that the average person probably wouldn't laugh at. But it is a very stressful job. We don't get to see on the outside, like the officers, they see the whole call as it goes through. They're there, we're not. We always assume the worst in this job. We always assume the worst scenario possible so that we make sure we've got the right help and the correct amount of help there.
The one call that comes to mind is my partner and I, working down in Columbia Center, had been responding to a shots fired call, and the information that the 911 call taker was receiving and being passed on to the radio dispatcher was that it was just a general shots fired call at first, and then the shots were being fired in the street, and it happened to be the street that we were on. We were rolling into an intersection unaware that there were 2 people firing shots at each other, and if the dispatcher had not made us aware of their location from the information they got from the call taker, we would have rolled right into the middle of the gunfight.
Those of us who work in police communications hope that we have made clearer the process of 911 and how to better utilize this vital tool in times of emergency. Now let's go back to the studio with Randy Curtis, who will take your calls.
Thanks, Debbie. This is Up Close, live, the phone-in segment. We're talking about the 911 Dispatch Center. 684-8828 is the phone number. We encourage you to call in right now if you have any questions, comments, or ideas about 911, your 911. In the studio with us live this evening, I'm pleased to have a 19-year veteran, I'm humbled, with the Seattle Police Department, a Dispatch 3 trainer, Karen Anderson. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you.
And then climbing the ladder even further, 30 years with the Seattle Police Department, the Director of Communications, the 911 Center, Randy Tibbs. Randy, welcome.
Thank you.
Congratulations on 30 years. Close to 30 years.
Close to 30 years.
Outstanding. I think what we ought to address first and foremost, Randy, is the non-emergency number that we have for citizens to utilize, and that's area code 206-625-5011.
Correct.
Can you give me an idea when it would be best to utilize that number over 911?
Okay. Let me give you an example of when to use 911. If the caller believes they need to see a police car, an aid car, or a fire truck, they should certainly call 911. If they have any doubt whatsoever whether or not what they're calling about is an emergency or not, err on the side of caution and call 911. Otherwise, if you're just reporting a theft, something that's after the fact, something that hasn't happened immediately, then call the 625-5011. About 30% of our callers use that number today. And that's largely through word of mouth, pamphlets, our crime prevention folks, block watch captains, those people have put that number out among the community. The advantage to us of them using 625-5011 for non-emergencies, in those rare instances when we have more calls than we can handle, our automatic call distributor automatically makes the non-emergency callers wait and moves all 911 callers in front of them. So that's the advantage to us and to the citizen.
Now, Karen, as a dispatcher, what have you found in your 19 years is the greatest misconception that individuals face that are brand new on the job that you've trained or are in the process of training as dispatchers?
Well, I think when people first come in there, they think that they're going to have, you know, an interesting call after interesting call after. They're going to be exciting shootings, you know, stabbings. Just they're going to be able to have these real dramatic type calls and be of great help on every single call. And it comes to routine type calls, and every call we take, yes, is important, but they're not all, you know, earth-shattering type calls. They're crimes that have happened and are very important to the caller, but they're not something that we're going to be sending an all-out police response or medical response on. They're routine parking complaints, barking dogs, theft reports. And so sometimes they're a little let down by how mundane sometimes the work can get, like any job.
Let's go to Patrick on line 1. Hi, Patrick. Thanks for calling.
Hi. This question is about the Astro digital radios, which will make it possible for block watchers to monitor SPD's radio system and to follow up with maybe over-the-air descriptions of perpetrators who are coming through their neighborhood. Could you comment on that, please?
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. Are you familiar with what Patrick's talking about?
Actually, I am. And Patrick, the good news is that there actually is a scanner now. I won't mention the brand name that I'm aware of, but it's available in most of the local radio shops that you can program with the talk groups used by, for example, SPD or the Seattle Fire Department. And the Department of Executive Services will provide you with those ID numbers that you need to program that.
Now, Karen, along those same lines, how important is the communications that we receive from the block watches as far as dispatching calls and officers? Is that something that is important that we see often?
Yes, the block watch captains and the block watch participants are very helpful to us as long as they answer our questions. You know, when they call us, they have so much information they want to give us. They want to give it to us all at once, and if they could just let the operators guide them through the questioning, they are a wealth of knowledge. And so if they can work together well with our operators, yes, they are very, very helpful.
Now, Randy, how do we go about describing or explaining to citizens that call in that have come home from work and found their house to be burglarized, and then the next thing they know, it's an hour and a half, 2 hours before an officer arrives? Can you explain the prioritizing process that you have to go through?
Well, unfortunately, we get more calls than we really have resources to handle. Now, if we could spread those out evenly over 24 hours, we'd be fine, but that's not the way the real world works. However, we do offer the public a number of alternatives. For example, we take a great number of reports and investigations over the phone, both by dispatchers and telephone reporting unit officers. Generally speaking, in rush hour time, that kind of thing, the more routine calls, priority 3 calls, are going to oftentimes wait anywhere from 15 to 35, 40 minutes, sometimes, on rare occasions, an hour, hour and a half. Now, generally speaking, we make an effort to call back to advise the caller not only of the delay in response, but to also determine if there's been any changes in terms of the status of that call. And we try to do that every 30 minutes.
Now, Karen, as a trainer, you've got to be able to determine whether a potential candidate that's going through the process will be able to handle all the stresses that come with a routine job followed by an immediate dump of adrenaline, as you said, with some of these calls. What type of individual, what are the best characteristics that you look for as this individual going to be a successful dispatcher?
I think what we really look for is people who naturally have the multitasking skills. Because when you're questioning a caller, you're not only thinking about what questions you have to ask, but you're thinking about what equipment you have to be using and what kind of response you have to the answers to the questions. And this takes, in seconds, you have to make these decisions. And a lot of those skills come with the individual. We can't train those things. They have the natural skill in many cases. And some, we just hone the skills. They'll have the skill and they haven't used it in a while. Maybe we just have to hone it or put it in just direct it to the right place. But without the multitasking skills, it's very difficult to do our job or to even just practice your natural skills. It's very hard to do the job, whether you're 911 call taker or a dispatcher.
Now, doing the job, Randy, we're going to be moving very soon, the Seattle Police Department, to a new facility. Can you describe what that facility is going to offer as far as amenities to the public when they call into 911 that they might not be experiencing right now with the dispatch center we're currently using?
Well, by coincidence, the fact that we, in the next couple of weeks, will be moving into a new 911 center and police radio dispatch operation. It's all new equipment, all new software. We've done end-to-end testing for Y2K on the radio systems, on the 911 phone system, the non-emergency numbers, our internal business phones. So we're fortunate, and by accident it happened to occur just before the turn of the century. From the standpoint of the dispatchers, you've been in our current dispatch center, and people refer to it in the most generous terms. I've heard it referred to as the dungeon. I've heard it referred to as other things as well. But it's a nice center. They actually have windows, which is, you know, we don't have now.
That's a bonus.
We can see the Space Needle and the Olympic Mountains. We can actually see if it's raining. We don't have to ask the officers on the street what the weather is doing out there. It's something that, in fact, is much needed and much deserved, especially by the dispatchers.
Well, I appreciate Karen very much, and Randy, thanks for sharing a little bit of what 911 is all about. As always, the Seattle Police Department, the dispatch, are always looking for a few good individuals. Give the Seattle Police Department personnel a call if you're thinking that you might have the qualities to be a good dispatcher. Randy and Karen would love to talk with you. 625-5011 is the non-emergency number. When in doubt, Randy encourages you to err on the side of safety and caution, 911. Thanks very much for watching. Next up is Eye on Crime and the Neighborhood Focus.
Thank you, Randy. Welcome to SPD's Eye on Crime. During tonight's show, we'll take a closer look at the Seattle-King County Crime Stoppers program. Let's check with Detective Chris Goff and find out what individuals are currently wanted by the police.
Hello, I'm Detective Chris Goff, Regional Coordinator for Seattle-King County Crime Stoppers. Crime Stoppers' mission is to improve the public welfare by enlisting the aid of the citizens within the community to put criminals behind bars. Crime Stoppers offers up to $1,000 cash reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of felons. This month's wanted persons are Abdul Musi. He's a black male, 39 years old, 5 feet 11, 170 pounds, brown eyes, black hair. He's wanted for failure to appear on assault second charges with no bail on the warrant by Seattle Police Department. Raymond Robert Salazar is a white male, 24 years old. He's 5 feet 10 inches tall, weighing 160 pounds, black hair and brown eyes. Salazar is wanted by King County for a no bail warrant for dangerous drugs. Salazar has tattoos on both arms. Kenneth White is a black male, 44 years old. He is 5 feet 11 inches tall, weighing 200 pounds. He has brown eyes and black hair. White is wanted for escape by the Department of Corrections and drugs by King County. White has tattoos on both upper arms. Dirk Avron Van Velzen is a white male, 27 years old. He's 5 feet 10 inches tall, weighing 160 pounds. He has blue eyes and brown hair. Van Velzen is wanted for probation violation on forgery in King County, possession of stolen property first degree, 2 counts, and burglary second-degree 2 counts in Snohomish County, and felon in possession of firearms by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and United States Marshals. Van Velzen uses many different names and is considered armed and dangerous. If you have any information on any of the individuals wanted, please call Crime Stoppers at 206-343-2020.
Each month, Eye on Crime will bring you information on people wanted by the police. Be sure to join us next month as Eye on Crime will bring you vital information that affects you and where you live. Now for our next segment, Neighborhood Focus. Let's join Will Witt and the Garfield Community Crime Control Council, otherwise known as GC4, in the Central area.
Hi, I'm Officer Will Witt. I'm standing on the grounds of the Garfield Community Center. Here a unique partnership is formed between the community, the Parks Department, neighborhood businesses, as well as the police department. They've come together to help reduce crime not only on this campus, but the surrounding areas, such as the community center, the Medgar Evers Pool, as well as the high school. The organization is called the Garfield Community Crime Control Committee, or the GC4 as they like to be called. To give you an overview of how this partnership got started and the spark that made it happen, here's Seattle Police Officer Liz Ellis.
It was actually a dual spark between the community and the police department. It was about the same time that we were getting a lot of calls from the community at that time regarding the shots fired on the track, and also from the police officers regarding officer safety, lack of lighting issues on the campus itself when they were responding to calls on the campus. And from that, we involved outside agencies that are stakeholders in the area, such as the Parks Department, the Police Department, local businesses, the community, the youth at the high school.
But from the Parks Department's perspective, from the police perspective, certainly from the neighbors and the businesses, we did have a problem. And we just started meeting, sort of hashing through how we should go about, and we decided one of the things we should do, first of all, was to determine what kind of or illegal activities were actually occurring here. So from that, we pulled together, decided on another meeting, decided we should invite businesses and some of the block watch people, sort of trying to figure out who the stakeholders were, brought the stakeholders together, and then took them through a rather grueling process of identifying all the different types of crimes that they had seen. Elizabeth got the statistics that had been turned into 911, but we recognized there were some crimes that had occurred that people perhaps had witnessed but had not bothered to call in because, one, it would have been over, or it was over, and they were just looking at the results.
Specific crimes started out as shootings on the track at night, shots fired, calls, narcotics, and alcohol on the pool top. A lot of disorders such as graffiti and loitering, breaking bottles, litter on the campus itself.
Another unique aspect about this project is availability of grant funds to do research on root causes of crime-related issues. To understand how this grant fits into what the GC4 is trying to accomplish, we talked to Heather Thompson of the Community and Information Services Bureau.
The grant is a little bit unusual. Unlike many other grants, this particular grant is very research-oriented. So this particular project is designed to support the problem-solving efforts of this particular community by helping them to identify what the problem is that they want to address, really figure out and go a little bit deeper to identify what are some of the things that are causing some of these problems. And then as they develop responses, we work to actually assess the effectiveness of the activities that they've done, the solutions that they've implemented. And hopefully out of the completion of this project, we will see a really wonderful impact in the community, and the community will be just that more of a safer place.
One of the major reasons that GC4 has the energy to keep a long-term project like this moving along is the individuals involved. They all share some common goals. To find out what those goals are, let's talk to GC4 member Jeff Williams, a block watch captain in the area.
The gut feeling I get from our involvement with GC4 is
our ability to get information from the police department and other organizations to help us in improving our neighborhood block watch, and also to interact with the other block watches to help the overall neighborhood, the Garfield community. It's important for all of us to know each other to effectively improve the neighborhood. I've seen changes in this neighborhood in the last 5 years that I've lived there, and I think it's going to improve as we go on. But it really helps to interact with the police department, the parks department, the other neighborhood watches, and anyone else that's interested, the business owners and others, anyone else that can help us improve the neighborhood.
State Farm has many good reasons for being involved in the GC4 program. First of all, businesses have a responsibility to give back to the communities they serve. And at State Farm, we feel that that goes beyond just the products we sell. As an insurer of homes and autos in that neighborhood, we have a responsibility to see that our policyholders' neighborhoods are safe and that the people that we serve have a safe place to live and do business. And we went to one meeting at the Garfield Community Center for GC4, and at that meeting we realized that there's a great synergy between those involved on the committee. And I suppose the first thing that I saw was it's not about grandstanding, or it's not about trying to be seen. It's about everybody coming together to make Garfield a safer neighborhood. And immediately we saw a framework where we could put our skills and our abilities from our company together with theirs and make Garfield safer.
So where's the GC4 today? And what are their hopes for the future? Once again, Officer Liz Ellis.
Some things that we've been doing, we got together, we have completed a partnership agreement in which each partner, currently we have 18 partners, has put together a list of things that they are willing to do for the community, and we will review that annually to make sure that they are committed to what they said that they will do. We hosted a problem-solving workshop in April where we invited many community members to get together, and we did some analysis work on what actually was happening on the campus versus what was perceived to be happening on the campus. We had a booth at the Central Area Community Festival where we did surveys. We surveyed the community again on crime issues, and we also hosted a pre-night out against crime on Monday, August 1st, where the community got together as well as the youth, and we had a great time. Had a barbecue, had family games, and had some crime prevention as well.
So that this will indeed be one of those crime-free zones. That's what we're doing. And I'm encouraged by the people that are joining us to say, yes, I want to be a part of that, yes, I will help you, that are giving hours and hours of their time with nothing more than the hope that we can make this a reality.
It's hard, but it's worth it. If you care about where you live, then you want to do as much as you can to improve where you live. And the Garfield community, the Central area is an area in transition. There are a lot of great people there.
The GC4 group has a remarkable amount of commitment, and everybody who is there is committed to making Garfield safer. Everyone does their part. Not everyone offers the same skills or the same ideas, but when it comes together, we hope that what we're doing will achieve great results for the community.
Some of those great results can be seen in a reduction of crime in this area. All we have to do is look at the newest crime stats. For the months of January 1st to June 14th, 1999, there were a total of 10 drug incidents as compared to a year ago when we reported to you 13 during the same time. In the area of car prowls, incidents from January 1st to June 14th, 1999, there was a total of 16, as compared to a year ago when we reported a total of 21. Robbery incidents in the GC4 area totaled 5 for the first 6 months of this year, compared to 13 last year, a drastic decrease of over half. And finally, vehicle theft and recovery incidents totaled 10 for January through June of this year. Again, compared to last year, a decrease. There was a total of 21 for the same time last year. It's not fair to say that the GC4 is directly responsible for the reductions of crime in these areas. But anytime you have the building of partnerships, like what's going on here in this area, Individuals working together to reduce crime and building on the rich tradition of community this area has always enjoyed, you will see crime decrease. Now let's go back to the studio where you can join me and my guest, Pat Elder. And again, joining me in the studio is Recreation Programs Manager, Pat Elder, as well as Crime Prevention Coordinator, Mike Yasutaki. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Happy to have you here. And Pat, how about giving us a little bit more on the history of the GC4 project itself?
Well, in March of this year, GC4 was 1 year old. We started in March of 1998, and it was started with a phone call that we received from a citizen. She called in the police department indicating that there was some crime on the area, and Officer Elizabeth Ellis called several of the various agencies and some of the leaders in the community together to see what we could do about the problem. We met on March, I believe it was around March 17th. That was our first meeting, and we've been meeting once a month ever since that time.
Okay. Now, Mike, as far as Crime Prevention Coordinator, how have you been involved with the project?
Well, as a committee member, I'm there to support, also be involved in some of the activities that are planned. We do a lot of recruiting, getting people involved in the community, and obviously I'm working with a lot of the block watch captains in the block watch neighborhoods.
Now, again, stressing partnerships, we've got a lot of different communities coming together. What's a little refreshing is to see the business community at this point. Now, initially, how willing or how open were they to participate with GC4?
Well, initially what we did was we went door to door, we went doorbelling and met with as many of the owners and proprietors that we could. Unfortunately, because of the fact that they're small ventures and business ventures, that a lot of times they don't have the resources to be able to attend the meetings, but they did support us verbally and through some of the partnerships agreement that they signed. They're in full support of what we're doing, and I see this as a kind of like an ongoing process in getting them involved in assisting them too. So it's definitely a partnership and a mutual cooperation.
Okay, great. Now, Pat, what about probably our most precious resource, our youth? How strong has the youth involvement been with GC4?
When we first started meeting, we had about 2 meetings, and then we recognized that we weren't getting as much youth involvement as we were looking for. So we did an active recruitment, and right now we have several youth that are attending the meetings. They've done some of the surveys, and we're really pleased with that involvement. Michael's getting ready to do some more work to do more recruitment of the youth actually in Garfield High School. So I think that we'll see an even greater participation amongst the youth. They are indeed a part of that campus and a major part of the campus.
Okay, outstanding. Now, earlier we were watching a segment and you commented that a particular mural near the Garfield Community Center has been virtually spotless for over a year. No graffiti, nothing like of that sort. As far as other benefits that you've seen in the community, can you give us maybe a few other examples?
Well, the campus itself is cleaner. As you drive by, you'll see that there's a tremendous difference in terms of how the campus is maintained, both by the people that use it and the staff. We're starting to see less crime happening, and it's more community coming on campus. I've gone to meetings there in the evening, and it's just full of people, so it's a very exciting place.
Okay, very good. Now, as far as other communities, various communities throughout the city that would probably really like to get started on maybe a similar project in their areas, how could they get started? Would there be any contacts or?
Well, they can certainly start by attending one of our meetings. We meet on the 3rd Tuesday of the month, 5:30 at Garfield Community Center. That'd be an excellent place for them to come, take a look at what we're doing. We'll be more than willing to share any materials that we have, and I suspect most of these communities hopefully will have some form of community police team. That would be an outstanding place. They just go to the adjacent businesses, neighbors, find a place to meet. One of the community centers would be a good place. Start meeting. We'll be happy to work with them.
Okay, great. Okay, well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for in this segment. However, next up is Detective Steve White with a piece on abandoned vehicles, as well as this month's crime prevention tip.
Hello, I'm Detective Steve White of the Crime Analysis Unit. We got a request from Seattle Watch to give you some information on Beyond the Badge about a significant problem in the Seattle area, and maybe even on your block. The problem is abandoned cars, and the reason I'm standing in this vacant lot here in South Seattle is not long ago it was filled with abandoned cars. They weren't just a visual blight on the neighborhood, they were a magnet for criminal activity and a strain on police resources. Although we may have cleaned up this lot, there's more to do. And to tell you about this problem and what we can do together to solve it is Parking Enforcement Supervisor Darlene Strait.
It takes over 6 people full-time to handle the volume of complaints that come in monthly, which is over 4,000. And at times, even with that, they are continuously backlogged. It just seems like we're never right on top of it.
I'd like to report a car that's been abandoned. It's a Mercury Sable. It's tan colored. It has Alaska plates. It's been parked in front of my house for a couple of weeks, and it was parked about a block away for several months before that. I think it's already been ticketed once, and it was moved, and now it's been parked a long time again. So would appreciate it if you could ticket it again and if they could get rid of it.
I don't believe people have a right to leave their vehicle out on the street for months on end. It's not being fair to your neighbors, or it is not being fair to someone if your vehicle does not belong in that neighborhood. You need to have the vehicles, if you're going to have more than one vehicle, and if you're going to store it other than in front of your home, you need to have it on private property.
Hi, this is in regard to a car that's been parked partially in front of our house for about 8 weeks. It's a California license plate.
I think a lot of times the vehicles really are not abandoned. Well, there's actually people that I know of in town that have 50-plus vehicles. There are a few individuals that our officers spend an awful lot of time on their vehicles because the complaints do come in, people do call about them, and it's, you know, they're in court with these issues a lot of the time, and the people continue to buy these vehicles and just put them out on the street.
Hi, I actually have 3 vehicles to report, and they're all in the same location. I think they're all parked by the same individual.
The street is not to store your vehicle on, would be the message, I think, from us. It's, you know, it's one thing to park in front of your home, but do not store your vehicle, especially if it's not drivable. You know, it just, it can create problems. Sometimes it's a magnet for children to play around, and it can be kind of a hazard in a lot of aspects. If something does seem suspicious, call it in, by all means, but make sure that that vehicle has been there for a couple of days before they call it in.
Hopefully this has been informative. If you think you have an abandoned vehicle in your neighborhood, call the Abandoned Car Hotline at 684-8763. Now to take your calls in studio, Randy Huserick and Chief Norm Stamper.
Chief, thank you for joining us this evening to take calls and questions here at this point in the show.
My pleasure, Randy.
If you'd like to call into the show, you can call us at 684-8828, 684-TV28 here at Beyond the Badge. Now, Chief, obviously the big event here for the department was the release of the Blue Ribbon Panel's report and their findings on the recent goings-on with the department. You've had a few weeks to review the Blue Ribbon Panel's report. As a chief, what did this report tell you?
Well, I think at the top what it told us is that we have a good department, a very strong department. In fact, statements in the report make it very clear that there is no systemic or even widespread corruption. That frankly didn't surprise anybody in the Seattle Police Department. It did, in fact, point out a couple of vulnerabilities in our system, and I think it's important that we act on their recommendations as quickly as possible.
Now, being the chief of police, being the one who was really kind of under the microscope here, do you feel that you were vindicated, or the department was vindicated by the report?
Well, I know that there are many who want to personalize this, have a tendency to personalize it, and as one who has been the subject of much of that publicity, I've attempted as best I can to depersonalize it, to look at leadership issues, certainly my own, the leadership of members of my staff, our managers and supervisors, but mostly to really look at accountability and to raise and answer the question, are we doing the right thing and are we doing the right thing well? And I think we generally are. We have some areas that need improvement.
Now, one of the big recommendations was the creation of the Office of Professional Accountability. Can you clarify the report's recommendation on the creation of this office?
Well, what the panel is recommending is the creation of a civilian director of a newly formed, or what would be a newly formed, Office of Professional Accountability. The civilian director would be selected by the police chief, subject to confirmation by the city council, and this person would be responsible for our internal investigations process. So in effect, what you've got is a civilian who is now inserted into the process that normally has been conducted by sworn personnel.
Okay. Now, with the information that you've gathered from the report, where does the department go from here now that you know that you've got the report in your hands and you've looked over it and it's certainly made its way around?
I think the next step is to finish an evaluation of each of the recommendations. The mayor basically asked for 30 days or said that it would take us about 30 days to review very carefully all of the recommendations. What we would love to see is, in the end, a position supported by the mayor, the council, the police chief, all of our employee unions. We have several that are involved by and affected by these recommendations. I think that's asking a lot because some of these recommendations are clearly quite substantive, but that's the goal, is to try and see if we can reach a full agreement.
Okay, now was that a set time frame, the 30 days that the mayor, or was that kind of a ballpark figure? Is that what is going to be adhered to, that 30-day limit? Well,
I think this mayor, when he says I want something done in 30 days, is going to get it done in 30 days. Okay. In this case, what we're responding to is generally to the report, to its recommendations. Where we can be specific, we will. Where we cannot, then we're just going to simply have to sort of rely on a process that has served us well as a city and as a community, and that is looking at the labor relations contracts that we have with our employee unions, looking at administrative implications of each of these recommendations as well.
Okay, well, another big change here in the department this month was the opening of the new West Precinct located at 810 Virginia Street. Where does that place the department now that the operations portions, West Precinct, the patrol officers are now no longer housed in the public safety building, now they're down in the new precinct. You know, well, now what happens? What does this mean for the department and for the community?
I think it means an awful lot for our personnel, both sworn and civilian. They're now in a professional building that was built not just for the purposes of efficiency, but also for the creature comforts of our employees. I think the piece that you saw with our communications dispatcher just means so much to us as an organization. And it also means that the third floor in the public safety building is kind of like a ghost town these days. It's real quiet, and we can actually find room to park some cars there on that third floor.
Still being housed out of the public safety building, I can vouch for how empty the third floor is, and to come down there now, and it's been strange for all of us that are still there to see the third floor empty, the G deck empty, and to make those adjustments. What are the plans for the public safety building at this point as far as the units that are still in the public safety building? Well,
the mayor and the city council have now signed off on plans for a new justice center. I'm assuming that a subsequent Beyond the Badge episode will deal with that issue, but the idea is to break ground perhaps as soon as 8 months from now on a new building that will house the municipal court and police headquarters, and we're obviously delighted with those plans.
And then we're probably maybe skipping ahead a little bit. Where's the department with the new Southwest precinct that was proposed? Gosh, that's been, what, maybe about a year and a half ago?
That one's also up and running. I think we're at a point, really in a period, I guess, of unprecedented improvement and growth in the police department. And speaking as police chief and understanding what this means both to the community as well as to our department, we're delighted with this progress.
And how, as far as the department, obviously the question that was so prevalent last year, this time of year, was the department's staffing numbers. And I can certainly see with some of the serial numbers that I've seen coming across the new marching orders, I'm beginning to feel like a wily veteran, having been here a whopping 6 years now.
You are a seasoned veteran now, Randy.
And I'm seeing serial numbers that are a lot higher than mine were when I was the new kid on the block. Where is the department with its hiring?
Well, I'm really pleased to report that we're 38 positions ahead of our hiring target at this point. That's no reason for complacency. I think the year 2000 is going to be a big challenge for us. We need to continue to push our recruitment message and to make the Seattle Police Department an attractive place to work. Obviously, there was an appeal for communications dispatchers. We need to hire more of those, but we also need to hire new police officers. So every opportunity I get, including this one, I would make an appeal. No matter what you're doing today, no matter what job you're holding down, if you have any interest in being a Seattle police officer, we would love to hear from you.
Great. Apparently we have a caller, Richard from High Point. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Richard, what's your question for Chief Stamper?
For Chief, how come some community officers don't stay in one specific area?
Richard, do us a favor and turn your TV down a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
Richard, that's an excellent question. One of the reasons that we might see movement out of a neighborhood is that the individual officer has been promoted or has been reassigned to a specialized assignment. Maybe that particular police officer wanted to become a detective and worked hard to accomplish that and earned it. So those are two of the most obvious reasons that we see movement. But like you, I would just as soon see as little movement as possible in our beat and district assignments so that our officers can get to know you and others in your community and develop as much knowledge and wisdom and insight about your neighborhood. That always helps in our problem solving and crime fighting partnerships.
And I can certainly put in my 2 cents within that. For those of you that haven't noticed, my title changed from when we first came on the show. When I was Officer Randy Husrick. Now I'm Detective Randy Husrick. And obviously that was one of the things that I wanted to do here in the department with some movement. I'd worked patrol at West Precinct, and I'd worked both patrol and CPT down South Precinct. I had some wonderful community people that I worked with, and I got some wonderful words of encouragement from them when I unfortunately had to tell them that I was leaving and was.
So you deserted your community.
When I deserted my community to take a different job here in the department, where I'm now assigned down in the department's accident investigation section, and I've certainly enjoyed the last 4 months and the last 6 years that I've been
Well,
here.
that's a tough job that you've taken on, and requires a lot of, in addition to basic police skills, a lot of science knowledge and understanding. So I congratulate you on the job, Randy.
Well, thank you. It's been testing my math skills once again.
I don't doubt it. Better thee than me.
Well, Chief, I want to thank you again for coming on the show this evening. We hope you enjoyed this evening's show and that you'll join us again next month, Tuesday, October 5th, for our next show, when the show takes a look at a serious problem that's facing all of us today, youth violence. We'll also see how patrol officers in Seattle schools are helping with this problem, and we'll meet with a group of teenagers who are putting a positive spin on the youth-police relationship. If it's October, that also means it's time for Bacon Bowl 21, time for the annual football game pitting officers against officers, benefiting children's charities here in Puget Sound. For all of us here at Beyond the Badge, thank you for watching this evening. I'm Detective Randy Husrick. Good night.